Clay, what'd you make of your day overall today?
Yeah, I mean, just got to finish some outings there. I think if you get to that six there, and really the leadoff batters, there's a couple innings they scored, leadoff batters got on, and same with the sixth inning there, the leadoff guy got on and put some pressure, and really just couldn't finish the outing. If I could finish that six and put the team in a much better position to win that game, but something going forward I need to work on and know that, especially in this role, I mean, to be able to finish outings is huge.
How do you work on something like that?
Yeah, I think it's just learning how to navigate, especially the third time through, kind of what's working, and really just kind of what pitches you can go to later in the game, and just get a feel for kind of yourself and also the game situations. When you can really need to attack someone, when you can lean into your strengths. Just all those game situations, but it's really, I think, just the emphasis and making sure that you really get the first guy and take it batter by batter.
Like Mendy was mentioning that the sweeper was a little bit of a struggle for you today. When you talk about figuring out pitch mix and what works, how much more challenging was that today without that pitch being as sharp as it usually is?
Yeah, the command of the sweeper wasn't there early on. It's something I still managed to still throw it and kind of started to get a little bit more feel for it toward the end. But I still feel like I was able to get the ball on the ground, kind of even without that. But maybe there's some spots where it feels a little bit sharper. There's some swing and miss. It allowed me to throw a few less pitches with two strikes. But overall, I feel like I was able to get the ball on the ground. They were able to put the bat on the ball, just enough with a couple guys, scoring position. But it's one of those things where you're not going to have all your pitches, every day, and it's just, I was able to use the changeup a little bit more today and got some, made some good pitches with it. So it's one of those ebbs and flows. You got to learn to pitch some days without, maybe a pitch or two.
Is that something that you're still adjusting to in this role? I mean, when you don't have one pitch, it's different when you're just pitching one inning, but when you don't have one pitch over several innings, then you have to really make some big adjustments.
Yeah, I don't know if it's big adjustments. I think the big thing is, when it's a pitch that's kind of a pretty big part of your arsenal, you can't just abandon it. And so I feel like I was able to kind of still find spots to throw it. And eventually, it got better as the game went on, and I think that's just something that, as a reliever, it's easy to just kind of maybe abandon it and go to kind of what's working. But we're still able to mix a few in and start to get a little better as the game goes on. But it's definitely something you got to kind of be aware of. You can't. It's not really working. You don't want to overdo something, but at the same time, you can't just scrap it. So it's just walking that fine line.
What do you make of the team's offensive struggles right now?
Obviously, we'd like to put up a few more runs on the board. We've had, streaks in both games where, we put a lot of pressure on, just not able to get the big hit right now. But we've had a few guys come through, Louis and Mark, and so we just haven't been able to get like the big one to be able to kind of put more runs on the board, but. There's been some really, really quality at-bats. I thought, Lindor's was a quality at-bat there at the end. It just didn't find a hole. Obviously, Juan came, within feet of tying the game. Thought he had a really quality at-bat. So it'll just keep, if we keep putting pressure on, it'll come, it'll happen. But we just have to keep putting the pressure on and, keep believing in ourselves.
You played with Wright. Obviously, you've been around for a bunch of these number retirement days. What's the disappointment when you can't win?
It is disappointing. He was one of my mentors and, always was trying to be like him, coming up. And so definitely disappointing to lose on his day, but it made it no less special. That ceremony beforehand, I think, was amazing, not just for him but for the fan base to share it with him, and I was over there like trying to hold back tears because it just was such a special moment, and you could see how much the fans appreciate everything that he did and leaving his heart out on the field. And so to be able to have that relationship in this game with the fans is something special and should definitely be treasured and celebrated. And so it did not take away from his day at all.
He mentioned you by name in the press before his ceremony, saying that when his son grows up, he wants to tell him to play like you when he grows up. How does that make you feel to hear something like that?
Honestly, it's surreal because, like I said, he was one of my mentors coming up, and he was Captain David Wright, and he was the guy that you wanted to be like. He probably would laugh at this, but the MLB game that I played, when I was younger, had him on the cover, and he was it, and to be able to, when I got in this organization, to even talk with him and pick his brain, and then he was so kind to me and had dinners with me and set things up for my family and I and passed wisdom on to me, and I just was so thankful for him. And so for him to express that he'd like his son to play like me, like that's just surreal to me. It's full circle, and it's the biggest compliment that I could receive.
What are some of those things, like pieces of wisdom that he taught you that you sort of carry on a day-to-day today? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think just the daily work. So I got to be around him in spring training a lot, and then towards the back end of his career, and I got to see the daily work that he put in, and how much he took care of his body and how much he focused on recovery and his workouts. And once the game ended, it was right on to preparing for the next day. There was no lull in between. He was very regimented about everything he did, and like he mentioned when he spoke, he worked harder than anybody else. And I saw that. I got to watch it in person. And so not only did his words of here's what you need to do, here's what you need to be willing to do to outwork people, not only did I hear those words, but I saw him put it into action. And I think for me that spoke even louder than the words, because there was weight behind it, and I saw the example that he set behind it. And then he also just gave me a lot of advice on New York and how to handle the media and how to handle being in a big market. And we were both first round picks, so he kind of gave me some advice on, listen, there's going to be some tough times, and you're going to have to wear it, but it's how you conduct yourself when things aren't going as well. That's the real measure of yourself. And so he passed a lot of great things on to me, and I will be forever grateful for him.
Brandon, I know you said that it was just a matter of time before maybe things started turning around for you guys. Is there maybe a sense of urgency that is building though right now, maybe during this stretch?
I mean, there's a sense of urgency every day. You want to win every game. And when you don't come through, it's not like we just are like, oh, well, didn't come through. Like, that's not how we got to this point. We're extreme competitors. Like David spoke earlier in his ceremony, he said if they were eating pizza, he was competing with his brothers. Like, that's the way we are here. So it's not just, hey, we didn't come through there and that's fine. But there is a sense of being able to flush today and move on to tomorrow that you have to have in baseball in order to succeed for a long time. And I think we've got a lot of guys that are very good at that here. But there's a sense of urgency every day, because the guys that have been here and the guys that were here last year know that we made the playoffs by one game. So one game can decide whether we get into the playoffs or whether we don't. And the guys that have been here and the guys that have been around, they know that. Doesn't mean that we're not going to lose. Like, that happens. It's baseball. You're playing, very good players on the other side of their page as well. But every day there's urgency to try and win and try and come through in these situations. So, and I know that's the case for all these guys.